Yes, okay. All right, so welcome to today's roundup. Today we're going to be talking with Melissa Floor from Special Ed Programs with the Department of Ed. She's going to discuss consent to invites. We have a few dates to start off with. First, we have more roundups coming up. You're going to click it, Maya. Um, we have a few roundups coming up. November 19th, we'll be going over career awareness. Then we'll take a break for the holidays and start back up in February. As always, if there's a subject you'd like to hear about, please contact your liaison. We're open to any suggestions, and as always, our recordings are of our previous roundups can be found under the events tab at tslp.org. All right, Catch the College Wave is coming up very quickly, November 6th at Mitchell Tech, and November 20th at Western Dakota Tech in Rapid City. Please get in touch with your liaisons if you'd like to register and attend. Is yours is, when is yours, Maya?
Mine is next Wednesday. We do have a few spots available, so if you still want to register last minute, just email me with the number and we'll make sure that we get you on there.
All right. Sorry, I said it was November 6th. I had that written down for some reason. All right. And then Let's Talk Work will be in the spring. Um, Again, we switched the Catch the Waves and the Let's Talk Works. We switched the seasons. So, um, next we have the 27th Annual Youth Leadership Forum. Please hop on tslp.org again to find the application under the events tab. We can also send you the link if you'd like for the application. To register, just go ahead and get in the tslp.org, sorry again, to the events tab. There's also a link for the leadership if you know of students who would be a good delegate or who's been a delegate in the past, who would be a strong leader. Please encourage them to apply for a leadership position. The leadership applications are due on November 21st, and the delegates are due December 19th. All right, next, we'd like you to notice we changed our date for the Transition Summer Institute. It'll be July 29th and 30th, same place, Arrowwood in Oklahoma, sorry. We'll let you know when that opens up in the spring. All right, Melissa Floor, with Department of Ed, you can take it away.
Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us today. It would be great if you could let me know which school district you're with in the chat. Like they said, I'm Melissa Floor with the Office of Special Education Programs. I oversee the accountability reviews that we do with the school districts. And I was a transition liaison project about 5 years ago. And so I work closely between those two things. I work closely with Lori, with our office too, and the liaisons that help do those reviews. So we're going to kind of talk about inviting outside agencies today, and I hope that you'll participate. That's the plan for this group. So hopefully can have some conversations and share some suggestions and ideas that you're doing in your districts regarding inviting outside agencies. So let's see if I can get my PowerPoint to share because it wasn't working very well here just a second ago. So hopefully we can see that. Inviting outside agency. So the purpose regarding transition section really, right, is that transition planning is federally required and it's in our state regulations because we mirror that. Beginning with that first IEP that is in effect when the student turns 16 or younger by the IEP team, and transitions focused on that student's future education, training, employment, and independent living. And we want to activities to help meet those goals for the student. So we're going to just kind of talk about quick the district requirements for inviting outside agencies specifically related to IEPs. We need to identify any other agency that's likely to be responsible for providing or paying for transition services. Send a representative. Um, and we need to get parent consent or the student of the age of majority to invite that outside agency, since the IEP team is really talking about confidential information. And so we want to make sure there's written permission for them to be at the meeting to hear that. Not only to hear that, but to, right, you're inviting, telling people that this student has a disability. So we want to make sure that agency has permission to be there. Right. Just, as we can, as you're developing that IEP, right, the team that's supporting the student, the family, school personnel, but then thinking really about any of those community people that will be there to transition with the student. They might be able to get services now and then um, transition with that student as they leave you as the case manager at some point. The great thing historically about South Dakota is that our agencies very much want to work with students that are still in the K-12 school system. If you've ever been outside of any other state, that is not usually the case. And so a few years ago, regulations really push agencies to be in connect with those students. And so in South Dakota, we historically, that's been our culture, and we appreciate that culture. Years ago, I'd go to federal meetings and they'd be asking me like, why, what do you, how do you get VR to an IEP meeting before they graduate or age out? And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, they're always at our meetings. So that is a great thing about South Dakota. So as part of the process in regarding regulations or requirements by districts, there are requirements that we have to meet. But for the process for inviting outside agency, it may look different in each of one of your school districts. And so we're just going to kind of talk about what's required, and then what does that really look like within your school district? And we'd love, again, have you participate and actually share what those might look like. So what I want you to do individually is actually write down your district's invitation procedures. So when you go start off with visiting with the parent, who should we invite? What is all those steps that you currently know about inviting? So, this is a great process. Hopefully, your district does have written procedures, and if not, that's a big thing the Department of Ed is encouraging districts to have, is those written procedures. So I'll let you take a minute and think about what is completed and who does it, or what, or who's responsible to complete each step. So this is a federal requirement, and so it doesn't matter whether you're a tribal BIE or a public district. This is, of course, mostly I describe it as how the public would do it, but I do know it's same same requirements as federal. So how many of you actually wrote number one, um, know what my students' strengths and needs and along with their post-secondary goals? Did anyone put that down as their first step? So, right, before we can decide who we need to invite, right, we need to kind of know what those student strengths and needs are, along with those post-secondary goals. We want to know, right, are they on a path to work? Are they on a path to go on to post-secondary school, such as a tech school or a four-year school? What is really that path and what kind of supports are they going to need? Are they going to need independent living needs and supports or others? Two, how many put down the team needs to determine which agency to invite based on student? Typically go over the transition activities listed in the IEP and keep working on those till they're done and then develop new ones. Cool. So step two, right? We have to figure out what agencies we want to invite. And it really should occur during that team decision. So the year before, hopefully we can do it the year before we want to invite an outside agency and really going through and talking to the team about which agencies might be appropriate to invite. Generally, VR is kind of one of those universal um, agencies that can hit a lot of different students and where they're at and know a lot of the other services. But the transition liaison project does have different documents on the different adult services. I think there's going to be one that the DOE will have. Some of you have developed in your own districts, and one that
like with that teacher, because this
some of you have your own regional or local lists that you use. So really, so if someone wants to share what that kind of looks like in their district, does anybody have their own like local or regional list of agencies that they go through? Or put in the chat the types of agencies you've invited. So we have somebody who has yes, they have their own local or regional one. And if you want to develop one of those, I'm sure the liaison project would love to help you figure that out. What are some agencies that, besides vocational rehabilitation, that you use? Independent Learning Center. That's not ILC. Is it Independent Learning Center? Is that okay?
I think it's Living Choices, isn't it? ILC.
Oh, yep, Living Choices. I was like, there's something that, yeah, a little different. A tribal VR, very good. Augie Access Drive Search. Usually Augie Access 2 is well, I guess they can transition into the post-secondary. disability coordinators from those specific colleges. Yep.
What about Department of Labor, Betsy?
Yeah.
Sometimes Department of Labor staff. Oh, great. Awesome.
Whoops.
Liaisons, are there certain other ones that could be invited? Conflict-free case managers or the CSPs? Dakota Link? Dakota Link is an assistive technology. Okay. How do you explain it to parents that we just have to invite one of these people? Which ones should I invite? Or are you talking through why it's helpful? Like Kate says, really think about what the student supports after high school are going to need.
Well, since I was new to transition in high school this year, I definitely used scripts and things that I found on the website to talk through it because I needed to know as well.
Nice. Where did you find those, Carrie?
Some of them I found on the TSLP website, and then Betsy Drew when I took a transition class, which you should tell your teachers to take with her. She gave me lots and lots of resources and lots of help.
Awesome. Cool. Very awesome. I think some of the parent tip sheets have some of the suggestions, right? Cool. Well, if you have any you want to share, put them in the chat. Consent. So once we figure out which agencies we want at the next IEP meeting, we have to get consent for those outside agencies. And consent really means that parents clearly understand what they're consenting to, and consent needs to be in writing. So their written signature is required. And so really, what does that process look like? So is it in your district, anybody doing it different than this? That it's the special ed teacher's responsibility to make sure that that consent goes to the parent and to get that consent back? That's usually how it is the special ed teacher is the one that does that, and is thinking about which one. Sorry, I lost my train of thought with the consent. So really, what does that process look like? Are you the one who sends it out? Are you responsible? Do you do it at IEP meetings? Anybody actually talk about it and have them complete it at the IEP meeting? Yes. Yeah, that's the best way because then you don't have to chase it down if the parents are there and you don't forget about doing it. And sometimes transition things come up in the middle of the year, so then you have to. I've seen that like during a 3-year reval, in the prior written notice consent, other factors that they said we discussed which agency we're going to invite, and I sent the consent home with the PPW on consent. Please clarify, what was the question? Please clarify that doing it at IEP meetings is for the next IEP meeting. Right, you're correct. It's not for this current IEP meeting. So if you're sitting at an IEP meeting and you need to get consent, you're consenting for the next IEP meeting. Yep. I asked the parent to sign the consent before sending the meeting invite. Yep, that's perfectly fine. Oh, and the liaisons are putting some other potential agencies to invite. Okay, step 4, did you have step 4 written down as a meeting notice? So the district receives that written consent, and then the district develops the meeting notice documenting that agency is being invited. So your next step really should always be to get that. Before you put their name on the meeting notice, you have to have received that written consent. And so that's what we look for when we do file reviews, if that written consent comes in after the meeting notice was supposed to be sent out, then we said you didn't do it in the correct order.
Melissa, we have a thing in the chat that they just want to clarify, which I guess I could too. Please clarify that doing it at IEP meetings is for the next meeting, not the current one, correct? And yes, that is correct. It is for the next one.
So just make sure that you have that written consent before you put it on your meeting notice. And then don't forget to invite the outside agency. So is it that you as a special ed teacher, are you responsible to make sure that you send the invite? So you got permission to invite family support. And how does that, is that you who's going to follow up with it, or someone in your district's going to follow up? Some districts have a transition person that does all that, or an IEP facilitator, or it might be you as a special ed teacher. So it's really thinking about, okay, make sure in my written procedures, now that I got consent, now I need to make sure I do that invite. Or are you doing calendar invites for that agency, and who are you're getting that information to? And then you're going to hold the IEP meeting. So if the outside agency comes, what is their role? And so it might be helpful when the meeting starts to really talk about why this agency is there. Anybody have anything that you use to describe why that agency is there and how they're going to help develop that IEP? So when the agency comes, they're just, what kind of input does the agency provide if you don't have something, an introduction that you do at a meeting?
Somebody put in the chat, they do introductions, share a business card, and then ask questions.
Do they ask questions? Do they ever provide suggestions of transition activities in preparation for transition? Yes. Yes, they do. That's good. They talk about what options are available. Great. And what if the agency is unable to attend? So just as a district, you're not out of compliance if the agency does not attend. Your responsibility is to look for what might be any agency that would attend and provide the invite. So following that process. If the agency doesn't come, you can do things like consider maybe it's going to be a transition activity where you're going to try to link that student and family together to talk about what support. Invite, maybe we'll just try to invite to a next meeting. What are some other things if that agency is not able to be there? Okay. So this teacher, you guys, these are great. Providing a flyer, unable to attend, so set up a meetings call later. We have a transition folder for resources that we give to families. Very good. Great ideas. Liaisons, do you have any other suggestions, or Lori? Betsy, if you're still on, are there things that help parents?
Betsy just had to take a phone call.
Oh,
With
okay.
ILC also.
And they can always, we're here for parents too, so they can always share our contact information and have that parent contact us.
Again, if you have individual students, you're like, okay, what could we do if the agency doesn't come, or maybe what are their roles? Maybe the liaisons could help you to kind of come up with what that introduction of the role of an agency or those kinds of things. So I'm going to talk about some common compliance questions or situations we get. One of the common questions is, will one of these work for consent? Mom emailed me that I can invite whoever, or dad told me over the phone that so-and-so can be invited, Lifescape or VR. And the answer is no. Again, those regulations require that written consent. So if you don't have a written consent, an email or a phone call is not the same thing. Nope. We can send the consent form with the meeting notice. So if we get the written consent before the meeting, does that meet requirements? And if you send the consent form to be signed with the meeting notice, you can't add that agency to the meeting notice yet because you haven't gotten permission to send that. Consent must come before the meeting notice. So that's where lately we've found non-compliance. It's not because districts aren't doing a great job of inviting those agencies and having them there. It is related to putting them on a meeting notice and you haven't received consent for it yet. So what if the consent for outside agency doesn't come before I have to get that meeting notice out, right? You'll send the meeting notice without the agency on it. And then once you actually receive that consent, then send another meeting notice indicating the agency will be attending, has been invited to that meeting. So sometimes your district might say 10 days before the IEP meeting, that meeting notice needs to go out. And so you can send that. And then you could send another meeting notice letting the family know that, yes, this agency is going to be invited to this upcoming meeting. So sometimes, right, if you're signing consent the year before, you should always, when you set up the meeting time, let families know, remember you gave consent to invite Voc Rehab or Independent Living Choices for last year, and they'll be added to the meeting notice or those kinds of things anyways. So, or if the consent comes later, you'll just let them know, I'm sending another meeting notice out to remind you that now we have permission for them to be at that meeting. And then a common question, can we have the parent sign consent for outside agency to be invited to the next IEP meeting? Yes, you can do that. And so it sounds like that's a practice that you're doing. For those on the meeting call today, that's something you're already doing. It's probably the easiest. What if the parent disagrees to consent to have an agency invited? If you've discussed at the IEP meeting, make sure you document in the prior written notice the district proposed an outside agency, but the parent declined. Individualize the PPWN by naming which agencies the district proposed, but the parent declined. If discussed outside the meeting, document it when it occurred and the outcome, but discuss it at the IEP meeting too. Like, I called you in November, we talked about maybe what agency that we would invite, weren't comfortable at this time. Is that something we want to talk about for the next meeting? And then I just gave the regulations, the requirements. So even though there are certain requirements, how your district does it or what process your district uses, to do that may look a little different, and who's responsible. If you don't have those written in your district, it might be good to write those out for yourselves to make sure a good reminder, and that's something you can follow. So one other thing, any other questions with inviting outside agency? Do you have certain scenarios you want to clarify? Any tips you'd give to if you're a new teacher? Sometimes in my office, I do refer them to the transition liaison projects, just because they they sometimes can help you think outside the box of which agency would be good for a student in a specific situation and who would be the direct contact. Um, direct contact. Um, Somebody said take the free transition class from Parent Connections or Betsy Drew. So Betsy, you got to share your wisdom here. Parent said yes to voc rehab twice, but has not signed up with them. Yes. So that has not signed up with voc rehab or has not signed consent to invite them.
They said with voc rehab, Melissa. So like they got consent, but then like they haven't signed up with voc rehab yet.
Oh,
They're asking if they should invite them a third time if they continue to get consent.
I was gonna say that I've visited with parents. I'm sorry, Melissa, if I'm
no,
um,
jump in there.
but I've had a parent say we don't need voc rehab. He already has a job.
Past school is um the parents don't always feel comfortable not know because they don't know the voc rehab counselor, and so sometimes I think they feel like intimidated, and so oftentimes when they come I'd say what can I take for paperwork, and I meet with the parents and actually go through it with them and help them fill it out because sometimes they don't understand how to fill it out. It's a lot. And they also feel like intimidated to ask questions when it comes to meeting with the voc rehab counselor. So they do the initial thing, and then I'm like, leave what you can with me, and I will meet with the parent, and then we can have those crucial conversations during those meetings to help them understand why they're doing, because they don't understand why they need a social security, why do they need my kid's social security card, or things like that. And so that's alleviated a lot of that frustration on the parents' end by having somebody familiar with their family background, just to do it with them.
Right. And sometimes, right, the district's responsibility is to look at who might be invited. And if families at this point don't want to follow through with that or receive those services, then I mean they're right, parents cannot consent to that. So and every parent's in a different spot. So Okay. But I like that. That's a good example. So a topic also came up, and we comes up a lot about prior written notice after those meetings and what we could be considering for transition to write in those prior written notices. So I'll kind of give some examples for you. Prior written notice provides that parent a summary of the discussion and supports reasons for those decisions that you made regarding especially transition. It also reminds the district what was discussed and the reasons why for those decisions. So sometimes we say we got to do it for the parents, but it's helpful for the district too. And you're really thinking about which IEP areas had some discussion related to it or decision making. Did you talk about any pros or cons of a decision? Did the parent mention a proposal and what was the district's decision regarding that? And what specific questions brought up in response? So somebody, I was just visiting with somebody, and that's what they do. If a question comes up, they write it down for sure. So some examples of letter A, the transition proposals, right? Did the team determine to add independent living post-secondary goal? If yes, why? Right? So independent living is one of those. It could be an why we accepted to write one, and it could be a reject statement, right? Because not every student needs one. Why did you choose or add a transition service activity? Right. So especially if this is a new year where you're doing transition activities, did you add or delete one? Will the student have some employment activities that we're going to focus on, such as trying to get them in project skills or something like that? Is the student on track for a diploma? If not, why? Did the team make a decision to modify diploma course requirements and discuss the pros and cons of that? Outside agency, we propose this agency to be invited, or we're proposing to connect the parent and the student outside of this, or whatever is the case. Consider the student's employment goal. Did the team feel it was achievable, or did they edit or provided activities to support, right? So sometimes our students have no idea what, I just want to go to work, but I don't know what to do what. Then maybe you as an IEP team said, because the student's not sure what they wanted, we added these transition activities. Transfer rights was discussed and will occur on what day, and those kinds of things. Some examples of that: transition rejections, right? So that's our number one. What should we reject? If a student didn't require independent living, measurable post-secondary goal, why? Transition activity was one proposed, but the team decided not to add it, and why? You know, it might be something where the team decided to wait until next year to implement the activity because of this reason. Student is still too young for project skills, but maybe we'll start the application process. Maybe credit recovery needs of the student. The student was unable to, whatever. Discuss outside agency, but was declined and reason why. Team discussed requirements for graduation, and maybe there's a reason why we've rejected the he'll meet those graduation requirement, the diploma or not. Some description of data information used. Maybe you're talking about student interest survey results completed on whatever day. So those might be the ones you've done. Maybe they're in personal finance and they've done things. The diagnosis of that you used, what transition assessment was completed on what date, a principal's report on the courses completed for graduation, right? So somebody in your district, either a school counselor or maybe the principal, is tracking which classes were completed and which ones still need to be completed for a student. And so that's useful information. Maybe which agencies provided input, reviewed parent and student checklists, and so forth, like got written input from someone, transition report, those kinds of things. Sometimes it's important to add specifics. What maybe it was the CTE teacher or the personal finance teacher or whatever that you may have also gotten. Other factors. This one is another one that really stumps teachers. Maybe there's concerns when the student transitions to, maybe they're, for whatever reason, you're having those transition IEP meetings when they're in 8th grade. And so concerns about when they come up to the high school or going into the 18 to 21 program versus the high school. Maybe that was brought up. Post-secondary activities, maybe the family has completed. So they said, oh yeah, we've done a tour of this place and this place, or we plan to have applications completed soon, or whatever those reasons. Questions for online course options, right? So when they get into high school, sometimes families may want to ask about dual credit classes, or maybe taking a couple of online classes for student recovery. And what is that like? Parent or student invited, right? They can invite whoever they want to the meeting. Maybe they invited family 360 or an aunt to the meeting. You could put that under the other factors. Provide parent resources on supported decision making. Parent requested a list of agencies, and so maybe you're going to follow up later with that parent. And then, or maybe a teacher indicated activities will occur this coming year. So like, let's talk work. We're planning to take a group of students to let's talk work. Is that something of interest? Or maybe you as the district share a couple of those activities that you're planning to take students to. Anybody have other examples that could be added, that you've added to the PPWN after the meeting that you could share? Just give me a thumbs up if going through this list was helpful for you as a teacher, trying to figure out what to put in the PPWN.
Well, this is Dan, and while they're thinking about those things, I think one of the things that could be added to this is, and I don't know if it's other factors or what, but the benefit specialist, meeting with that benefit specialist, and for all those students on Social Security or on SSI, and if they're participating in project skills or other work-related type activities, it'd be really beneficial to be seeing that benefit specialist. And usually they need to be referred to the benefit specialist through the VR counselor. So.
Yep. I think.
And sometimes that's pretty good information.
It could be under description of data used or some other factors, either one, depending on what the situation is. For sure.
And that's also good information to put on a summary of performance. So that they're
Correct.
Seeing the benefit specialist as they mature in their work related activities.
Yep. SS applied for adult SSI. Yep. Those things are part of those decision makings, but good important information too. That might be just other things that came up during the meeting that are important. Just always remember, since you're on, the transition liaison projects will help you with IEP writing, brainstorming about outside agencies or transition activities, or maybe different types of assessment opportunities. They'll give you and the team more information than maybe just an ESTR or TPI. discuss any process or requirements. So if you need help talking about what those written procedures should be, they have a transition TA guide, parent tip sheets for different kids that might be really helpful for your students, specific students. Feel free if you have special ed requirements to contact your state rep. I am the state rep for the Rapid City, Belfouche, Ogallala, Lakota, Wall. Those are all my area districts. We really like to help provide TA. Lori is on and she has that South Central region also, and she loves to talk about transition also. An IEPTA guide. We do have some transition pieces in that. It's been updated if you haven't known that in August of this year. So if you haven't taken a look at that, that's a good resource also. We also have the example forms such as the summary of performance that's required. And I know that's linked on the liaison's website also. So any other questions or want to share any other?
I have a question about project skills.
Sure.
I'm brand new to obviously high school, and so I have a student who's gone through VR, has been approved for project skills. I have a place where they can go in Baltic. Where do I find all the forms? Does VR have all the forms for project skills, or is there another place for me to get them?
So generally, you'll want to talk to your school's VR counselor, but specifically if you have questions like about project skills, Katie Gran with VR can also do that. She's the transition specialist and she's kind of the overall person when it comes to project skills.
Okay, so my VR counselor should have everything I need.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, that's all I have for you. If the liaisons have a couple other things they want to talk about, but if you do have written procedures, we have lots of districts asking what those look like. So if you want to share those at any time, please do. If you have some great ideas for the liaisons, they're always updating documents for us too. Yeah, so either the state office or your transition liaison, we'd love for those examples.
Thank you so much, Melissa, for coming on today and talking about this. Um, any other announcements? I know that there's a few of my schools on here. We have our Catch the College Wave again on November 20th. If you want to register, please call me and give me some numbers so I can sign you up. And again, Maya's is coming up next week on Wednesday. She still has some open spots, so give her a buzz if you can make that one. I think that's it for today. Any other questions regarding anything? You? All right.